I think the best way to learn is just to do what we're doing here right now, is to create content. As you create content, you're able to get feedback on that content. We live in such a social world where, we're able to get feedback. If it does add some sort of value, I think is the best way to attack marketing today.
Joining me today is one of my favorite people, an amazing person. His name is Cory Henke. He's from Variable.media. He's a marketing expert, brilliant guru in his business, tons of enterprise and startup experience. Here to discuss marketing strategies, the future of marketing, and all the fun things, to give all the advice to the people that we can give. We are, of course, in business of building great businesses, and marketing plays a humongous role. Cory Henke, please give a little bit of introduction about you, your agency, what you guys do.
Thank you for that great introduction, Yuri. I really appreciate it. A little bit about Variable Media. Started in March of 2017, and we really focus on analytics as well as paid media. Our expertise is in Facebook ads as well as Google ads, but that's not to say that we don't buy some of the third tier, which would be LinkedIn, Reddit, Quora, Pinterest, Snapchat, etc. Our core competency sits in analytics, and so we leverage Power BI to really power the data and the insights it takes to really serve our advertisers and really bring out those insights that drive their business. Being in business for a couple of years now, we've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, but we're very excited about the future.
Excellent. So, pleasure to have you here. One of the things I'd like to lay out is, there's a lot of change happening in the market. Right, the economy is changing, technology is changing, the audience is changing for sure, right? You have a new incoming audience, a ton of millennials are starting to enter the market and becoming very much relevant when they weren't 5 years ago. So what I'd like to start off with is discussing some fundamentals of marketing. What do companies need to be aware of? What should they be preparing? And how should they approach marketing from your experience?
Yeah, I think anybody starting out in marketing is really going to have to think about, how can I get the most education about what I'm promoting? Learning, I think, is by far more important in the beginning for any brand as well as sales, but I think what you learn can help influence how you go to market later on. And so I think the best way to learn is just to do what we're doing here right now, is to create content. Right? As you create content, you're able to get feedback on that content. And we live in such a social world where, we're able to get feedback. And that feedback comes in a lot of different ways. That feedback can come in a like, it can come in a share, it can come in a comment, it can come through a direct message. But this type of back and forth, we've never had before. And so this back and forth can lead to a lot of great understanding of if your product is going to work or not. Because as you know, as I know, we've got failures, we've got a lot of wins, but not everything works. And I think the faster you're able to understand if people want your product, if it does add some sort of value, if it gives somebody a feeling, the quicker you can answer that, I think is the best way to attack marketing today.
Very cool. Let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned a number of platforms. What are some of the hot platforms today?
And I think
for what type of businesses as well? Does it matter what industry you're in, or what are you trying to promote?
Yeah, one of the things I said at my presentation that I think I want to help people understand is that if you were running a business 5 years ago and you wanted to get into social media, right? You would say, "Oh, I'll have my brother run my social media."
Right.
3 years ago, it's almost like, "Oh, let me hire an intern. Let me get somebody out of college. They know all about that stuff, right? Let me get that guy." 2 years ago, it's almost like, okay, I need a mid to senior level type of person to do my marketing. But today, it's almost just like the leader of the company needs to be doing the social. Who am I gonna give a piece of my company to do the social? And so what I tell marketers in terms of the platform to start out on Facebook and Instagram. Mm-hmm. It's a great place.
And why is that?
It's easy, right? I mean, I can open up an Instagram account, I can open up a Facebook account, right? I can start a page, I can start my Instagram page, and I can start posting. That doesn't cost anything. The only thing that costs is time. Now, when you think about the platform and actually running ads,
right,
you're able to buy Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, Marketplace, mm-hmm, WhatsApp, right? audience network, all these different places you can buy within Facebook ads. And so I would recommend people to start there. But again, these are going to have to be companies, products, and services that want to build a brand, right? If we're thinking about just selling a product, if we just want to sell something and we don't necessarily want to build a brand, then we might want to look at search. We might want to look at, something like Amazon. And so it's really going to be dependent, on what they're going out there with, what their product or service is. But I always recommend, if you're going to build a brand, probably start with Facebook and Instagram.
And where does YouTube play a role in this?
YouTube plays a huge role. If you're looking for an audience that is going to sit down and engage with your content for a long period of time, that's where you'll want to be. But for most advertisers, I think the high majority, they don't have the ability to build very quality, good content. And not to mention, like when you think about YouTube, it's not an extremely social platform. Right? And so remember what I talked about in terms of feedback and learning from your potential consumer. You don't necessarily get a lot of that on YouTube, but it's not to say that that's not impossible.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about paid versus free, right? So we all know that posting to a deaf audience is a poor choice of time. Unless you're Gary Vee, that's just stacking up a library of content for years to come, right?
Yeah.
First of all, not a lot of people are very comfortable on camera, and a lot of people have a challenge with the content that they create. What would be your recommendation of getting started organically and kind of boosting through paid? How do you start developing that audience, developing that view? That brand awareness through some paid, because you got to remember there's channels, there's companies that are startups, and then there's enterprises. Right? Enterprises have a little bit more flexibility on budgets. Startups are much more conservative. So let's think about both sides of the coin. What would we recommend to startups with lean budgets versus enterprises that do have budgets, and what actions they should be taking on social?
Absolutely, that's a really good question, and I really want to attack like the last part of that question where we're comparing startups versus enterprise. Because as a startup, I think you have a great opportunity, especially today, because users and consumers today want to connect directly with the brand.
Yes.
And we know how hard that is to do with something that is an enterprise, right? And so when you're a small company, you might not have the dollars to be able to do a lot of paid, but you have the love and the energy to put in your brand that maybe an enterprise might not have. And that is super competitive today. And so if you're a smaller brand, I would say that focus on organic. And the place in organic where we're seeing the biggest reach and the biggest impact is Instagram and story ads. They're still trying to figure out this whole discovery thing. And we know that there's been such an increase of people using story ads. They're only there for 24 hours. And so it's almost like our first move when we go into Instagram. And you have some brands that are even enterprise that post maybe 2 stories a day. But you have startup brands that are posting 90 stories a day.
And they could show their journey throughout the day, right? Of what's happening. They could be really living, they could let their community or their following, their fans, to kind of live their brand alongside with them.
Yeah, and so, if you DM McDonald's, right? Do we expect a response? And if we do, it's probably somebody from customer service, right? If I DM the Nano Group, I might get you on the other end.
Yeah, most of the time.
And you might respond to me with a video response. I could literally see a video response for you. And I think that's the world that we live in, is we want instant gratification. We want to touch the brands that we work with and that we spend money with. And I think if you're a young startup brand, like that's the attitude and that's the kind of the track that you have to take. And then when we look on the other side, when it comes to enterprise, I really feel it's about, growing and hiring the right people internally. Like you've got all the tools, right? You got the money, you've got great talent inside. The company's already built. Now it's about how you take this brand and give somebody an experience, right? They know you. They know the logo. They're not going to forget it, right? But it's how do you take that and provide a special experience? And I think for bigger brands, it's about diving into specific categories, right? Like how do I go into basketball? How do I go into yoga the right way? How do I go into entrepreneurship? How do I go talk to the young kids in the way that they want to be talked to, like on
Right.
YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and things like that.
So I'm glad you actually bring this up, which a huge topic we always talk about as audience, right? You have to segment your audience and keep a focus. And we look at it from the marketing and CRO perspective, right? We're on the other side of the coin, on the post-click. So let's talk a little bit about segmentation and how to target proper audiences. And it requires more work, which is I think that a lot of brands fail on that fact, is that the spray and pray type of a mentality is what gets most brands in trouble and wastes a lot of money.
Yeah.
So the idea is to maximize on your budget, and we know segmentation is the key to that.
Yeah, I mean, we could go into audience targeting for absolute hours. There's so much stuff that you could talk about, but the big thing that I would say is the best audience targeting you're gonna find are on two different platforms, Facebook ads and Google ads. Nobody has more data than these two companies. But we must look at these companies and be able to understand their data. When we think about Facebook, it's all about user information that we've given, right? It's probably the best data you can possibly imagine. Whereas when we look at Google, right, and we think about buying on Google, I don't get a choice to choose between a logged in user versus a non-logged in user, right? Versus Facebook, where everybody's logged in. That cross-device attribution is absolutely amazing because they're always logged in. On Google, because I don't have that choice, what are they using to create their audience? It's usually intent. It's usually search, right? Like, what are they typing in? What websites are they going to? We know that's not necessarily the best, understanding of that audience. But still, for Google to be able to take Android, Gmail, YouTube, and your Google searches and be able to tie those things together, they can figure out some pretty cool stuff. Yeah. And so within those two platforms, that's where I would really stay if you're really trying to audience target the right way. But there's so many unique things that you can do. Like Facebook's lookalikes are probably the most powerful tool if you're trying to drive conversions.
Could you talk a little bit in detail about that? Very critical factor, actually.
Sure. What Facebook does is Facebook allows you to create a lookalike off of one specific audience, and you want to create a lookalike off of your most profitable audience. And so most people create a lookalike off of their purchasers, people who have bought their product. But you can also create a lookalike off of fans of your page. So people that have showed that intent of saying like, hey, I'm going to be a fan, you can then create a lookalike off of. If both of those audiences are still very small, right, for a startup, or you might not have that, maybe create a lookalike audience off of people who have engaged with your page or engaged with a post, right? We're doing all that stuff organically, we didn't have to pay for it, but we're able to create audiences like that. And one thing that I learned from Michelle Morgan this past weekend about lookalike audiences, this was absolutely crazy, is she said, when you're buying, okay, find a group of users that don't look like your audience, right? Create a lookalike off people that don't look like your audience, and then exclude them.
Huh, that's brilliant. That is brilliant.
First time I've heard it, and I was just like, wow, we continue to learn.
Of course, absolutely. So now let's tie the combination of two platforms, the Google network and the Facebook's network, right? I mean, we'll just bring them as two umbrellas. What's the strategy to cross-sell and remarket, retarget? Where do you begin, where do you end? Do you start on the Google side and look for people that are searching and then follow them through the Facebook umbrella, or is it the other way around?
First thing you have to do is you have to think about your product or service and what you're really trying to get out there, and make the bet to understand if you're going to get the best consumer via intent or the best consumer via discovery, right? If somebody's scrolling through and they see like a beautiful image of some new shoes that they absolutely love, like that's a great opportunity. But if you're going to be competing against Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, and every other shoe brand in the search results, that's going to be a little difficult. But if you're a B2B and your conversion is worth over 15K, and you're trying to find a really small audience, right? Their searches probably mean more to you than somebody looking for just shoes. So it really depends, but for me and for a lot of my advertisers that we work with, especially in the startup phase, it's always Instagram and Facebook first because of all the different placements they have. I get to see vertical, I get to see news feed, I get to see marketplace, messenger as I mentioned. And so with that understanding, you get to see a lot more user behavior, likes, comments, shares. I get to start to understand, oh, they really like this ad versus that ad. A lot of more analysis I feel like can be done in Facebook, but I would always recommend running both and drawing that comparison. Looking at your CPMs on both, looking at your CPCs on both, because I think for a brand early on, it's really about driving as much volume to your website and then starting to analyze that website behavior like you know so well.
Absolutely.
So,
Any particular favorite tools that you like to use for analytics?
Power BI. Power BI would be the tool of choice. It's a brand new product by Microsoft. We leverage it to really do multi-channel analysis where we bring Facebook, Bing, AdWords, and some of those other platforms that I mentioned together to really get quick insights that we can make changes on the fly.
Interesting. Since we're on a topic of analytics, obviously the goal is to get maximum for your budget, right? For your customer's budget and get the highest CPC. Am I using the right term? Right?
Probably lowest CPC.
Lowest CPC.
Highest
right.
CTR, I think you mentioned.
Highest CTR, lowest CPC.
There
right.
you go.
So in a very plain English, how do we get the most for our money? What's the lowest ads should somebody be running, and what are we looking for?
I think the value is really in story ads today.
Today. Okay.
This could change tomorrow, but today it's story ads. I'm kidding, but you know, a year ago I was going out and speaking, and I would talk about the most valuable impression being YouTube, because you have the 5-second skip button, and then you don't pay for a user until after 30 seconds, right? So that impression of 0 to 30 seconds was just so valuable to me. Today, I think all the value is in story ads, because you get real people.
This is on Instagram we're talking
Instagram
about.
story ads, vertical. You get real people. The CPMs are sub $5. The CPCs are under $1. And it's all about getting that volume. If you can get volume, you can start to analyze. And what you want to do is you want to get people through that funnel, at least to like the parts where it matters, right? Whether that's a form fill out, a conversion, you got to be able to see those. And so if you go out there with $1,000 or $2,000 and you spend it and you don't see that, you would consider it a failure, right? And so when you go into story ads, you give your chance more volume to be able to get down there to those type of metrics. And so I would really start with story ads first, but again, you know, in the B2B space, it might be search, right? Where you would start, but your CPCs and your CTRs are really gonna be dependent on your content. And so building really good content, building content that there's a variety, where you add emojis to the text sometimes, where you have multiple sentences and then maybe you try just a one-liner, right? You have different types of images, different types of actors. All those things need to be tested to understand what your audience wants. And I think we're really at a time where, you know, we might think we know what our audience wants, and that's why data analysis is something that we've made core, is that like, I can't, you know, say, I believe this will work. I want to say more like the numbers prove
Data
that we
doesn't
should.
lie. Data doesn't lie.
Allows me to go to sleep at night.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive into a little bit deeper into content, how to budget and how to manage your costs, right? So this is a very important thing that a lot of people are not recognizing, is that content is king. It always has been king. But today, you have so many different platforms and so many different forms of content, from, you know, context, visual, you know, video. You have, you know, stories, people going live, from professionally filmed to straight, you know, cell phones, right? So what do you recommend? What are you seeing as, you know, that works, right? Which is important. It doesn't matter what's being put out. What matters is, what are you seeing that works when it comes to content? What do you guys recommend as an agency to use for content, and on which platforms? How do customers best utilize content and marketing together?
Yeah, I think when we talk about content, you know, we really have to focus in on video, right? Like video content, I think, is far more engaging, and in a world that we live in where we have to stop somebody from scrolling, right? Like video is what's gonna get them to do that. And so when it comes to video, you can spend $1 million on a video. you can also go outside and shoot your video. And so with that wide range, it often confuses startup brands, young entrepreneurs to kind of say like, well, what should I do? And in my opinion, get started, do something. Because no matter what you create, you are going to get a response back. Might not be the response you want, but those are the learning experiences that you can have. Having run videos where we've spent over $1 million and having run videos where we've seen clients spend less than $1,000, both have been successful. Like I haven't, there isn't like, hey, you have to spend 50K for this to be successful. But if you do decide to go with a really good creative company and you're gonna spend 20, 40, 50, 60 grand, the thing that I would recommend is to build a long form, right? Build something that's 4 or 5 minutes long.
Right.
Because you can take that 4 or 5 minute long video and break it down to less than a minute to put it in your newsfeed.
Right.
You can get a 15-second spot out of that to put in your vertical story ads. You can still put the long form on YouTube where people are going to watch it for a longer period of time.
Absolutely.
And you can also put it on Facebook where you can cross your fingers and hope they watch it for a long period of time.
Also could live on your website, right? Informational.
You got it all, man. It's got to live on the website too, Cory.
Right.
Jeez.
Oh, you're on the marketing side, right? We're the
man.
gatekeepers.
Mm-hmm.
Cory, talk to me a little bit about stories and the advantage of using IG stories. Today seems to be the hot topic, an undiscovered territory, which is where entrepreneurs and brands can start taking advantage while it's still hot.
The secret to stories is the fact that it's only there for 24 hours. Right? It's the first thing that we navigate to every single time that we open that platform. And it's a different scroll. Like it's not this motion, it's that motion, right? It's a little bit faster. And you got to think that like when you open up this platform and you press that little circle there at the top, like you're initiating that. You're not being surprised by anything. Right. And so it's harder to upset a user when you're not surprising them and they made the choice to watch a set of story ads. I think the other thing that is unique to story ads, well, it's kind of a gift and a curse. Whereas like if you put something in the newsfeed, both on Facebook as well as Instagram, is you have the ability to comment, share, and like, right? But if you put a story ad, you really only have a chance to share it.
Right.
And so with that happening, it's very hard to hide a story ad. It's very hard to give a story ad negative feedback. And so what that does to the algorithm is it says, wow, this is an excellent ad over and over and over again, which usually lowers the CPM or usually spreads it a little bit farther. And because we watch so many story ads, you have more discovery opportunities. And so what Facebook notices is that like when a story is shared, right?
Yeah.
Or say somebody passes your story ad, but then goes back to it. Right? Like those type of indicators tell Facebook and Instagram to say, hey, push this to more people.
Right.
More people want to see this. And
I
so
don't think a lot of people understand that the popularity of your story and your posts actually triggers the algorithm to spread it further out. Their systems and their AI algorithms understand that the more people express interest, the more important it becomes and instantly starts to push it up, right? And gives it more exposure. The more people are skipping, the lower it drops it. So it's a completely different take on ranking, right? It's social ranking in this case, which actually you could also jump into your own insights, right? And you could see how many people actually skipped versus stayed. Right, and which gives you initiative to change your content, right? This is why I think it's very important what you said. Just start creating certain content, test it, see how people are reacting to it, look at the analytics, which is very important, which is you're a king of analytics. So, and the analytics will tell you, data will tell you if people are watching, if your content is interesting enough, or if they're skipping. And if they're skipping 24 hours up, the story is gone. You got a new start, you can try it again. Once you see the content that sticks, you could start pushing that more into other places of advertising.
And I think another thing that we left out is the fact that like there's so much functionality with story ads. Like I don't know if you've seen this recently, but now you can have multiple choice questions.
No, I didn't know that.
You have multiple choice questions now in story ads, but you also have the ability to poll, the ability to tag a product, the ability to ask a question.
That's
You know,
phenomenal.
like there's so much different things where you can get that engagement back. And if you remember how we kind of talked in the beginning about just like engagement, getting that feedback back on your product is so important. And so imagine if like we had that shoe brand, for instance, and like you had their shoes and like a competitor's shoes side by side. You say, which one do you want, right? You can see how that improves over time. Like you can really start to take two of your products and say, which one do you like best? That could help you understand, like from a new consumer perspective, where you want, what you want to really advertise with. So
This would be phenomenal for product launches, right? People launching products, whether it's retail, whether it's e-com, it doesn't matter, right? You can have the brand go basically real time, right? The site's going live, but publishing stories and real time showcasing and bringing in more audiences to see your products or see your brand.
I think the other thing that I would say too, you know, next to story ads is Instagram has 4 different quadrants or 4 neighborhoods.
Okay.
You've got stories, newsfeed, IG Live, and IGTV.
Right.
And if you can master those 4, or you can get into those 4 areas, like you're gonna really win on one of the most best prolific platforms. And Instagram is gonna look a lot like Amazon here real soon because of the shopping feature, right? One-click product, put your credit card in,
It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's completely shifting e-commerce. E-commerce, soon you won't need websites. You just need to have presence.
That's coming from a web guy. It's scary.
Hey, listen. I think brands need to focus more and more on an omni-channel shopping experience. All the things are tying together. You need to have your web, your marketplaces, your social. Every possible touch point where your brand lives and exists needs to be very uniform and needs to talk to each other. And then you need to track your analytics. You need to see where you're winning. And I think that the biggest thing is building, you know, fans and building communities around your own brand.
Yes.
I don't think it's any longer a discount sale, right? I don't think discounts matter anymore. People want to feel like they belong. People want to be part of a particular group, a part of a particular brand. And it's segmenting. It's segmenting naturally. And so brands need to, you know, not try to win everybody's business. Brands should win the business of the customers they want to have. And so, you know, painting a profile of who your customer is, figuring out the user personas, creating the targeted audience, creating the right content, right messaging, and then putting it through the channels, that should be the cycle of marketing.
Well said.
Full service, right?
Yeah.
And it needs to come back, and when people are landing to make a purchase, everything needs to click, everything needs to connect together.
It's so well said, and I want to build on something that like you touched on in terms of like those core customers, right? Like I don't think we do enough of that as brands, as service providers, where we're always trying to go bigger, get more revenue. I gotta continue to spread, right? Instead of focusing in on what's currently driving revenue and really saying, hey, how can we make this better? Can you be, you know, an influencer for us? You know, like what is it gonna take for you to be a brand advocate? How can we do things better? Like we need to have more conversations with our core clients, I think, to really understand, to help us scale.
Right.
And so that was one thing that I definitely
What
see.
is your view on influencer marketing? I'll just divert a little bit. Because influencer marketing is completely different than paid marketing, right? So how do you view it? Well, is it beneficial for brands? You know, should it be an add-on to the marketing strategy?
In short, influencer marketing works. Like it legitimately works. But I will say that similar to a lot of industries that we've seen, there's a lot of fluff. You know, there's a lot of advertisers getting taken advantage of in a lot of different ways, and you got to be able to evaluate the influencer partnerships that you work with. And so what I would recommend, and again, influencers are going to hate me for this, but I'm going to give it away. When you look at an influencer's page, regardless, well, let's take Instagram, for instance, right? And they've got hundreds of thousands of followers, all these likes, right? All these comments, you know, the engagement is just like through the roof.
Right.
What we've learned is that we can fake engagement pretty well.
Yeah.
Like it's not too difficult to go by followers and likes and comments, right? But what can't you buy? Where are not the bots?
I don't know.
They're not in story ads.
Huh.
There's no point for them to be there. There's no
Right.
social proof. And so for anybody that wants to work with an influencer, what I would recommend is to say, hey, screenshot your story totals. let me compare like what you're getting in stories to what you're getting from likes in your comments.
That's amazing.
You got 30,000 comments, but only 1,000 people watch your stories? Might be something up there, huh? But that's what I would recommend is to anybody doing influencer marketing, dive deep into what they're doing. Request, a PowerPoint of like how they've grown, why they've grown. Really work with them to figure it out because these are your dollars that you're putting up.
You gotta do research. You gotta research the people that you're gonna be spending your hard-earned money with, because everybody's happily gonna take it from you. But if you don't do your homework, you will get hurt, you're gonna spend money, and the worst part is, you're gonna think that it didn't work, or you're gonna have a bad taste in your mouth to say, the influencer marketing doesn't work or paid marketing doesn't work because you haven't done your research. What I'd like to talk to you about a little bit about clients and the type of clients you work with, and what is your ideal client look like, and talk to me a little bit about your onboarding process.
Yeah, absolutely. Our current client set is primarily e-commerce. And so we work with brands that have products as low as like $20, but as high as like $1,000 in terms of the average order value. But e-commerce makes up about 75% of our business. And then the other 25% is split between apps and business to business. Mm-hmm. And so being primarily e-commerce focused, that's where a lot of our kind of like strategy comes from. It's a lot of like what I talk about. And the size of our companies are doing in between, on the low end, like very starting out, maybe doing probably about $500,000 in revenue a year,
right,
all the way up to doing $30, $40, and $50 million worth of revenue a year.
And where do you guys like to get into? Like at what point do you generally like to get in with a brand?
I think, like our sweet spot is with a brand that's got a little bit of learning for us. Like they've done a little bit of paid media, they've tested it, but they're really looking for, an expert to kind of take over and say, hey, what can we really do, right? Like brands really use us to kind of test their product. Like, is this really viable, right? Like, I'll give you an example. Like last year, we have a brand called Golden Coil, okay? They're a custom planner, awesome, run by two sisters, and, they had never done advertising before. And so they came to us, and it was a friend of a friend recommendation. And so I said, okay, let's do this, right? First week, there's like, we want to spend $5,000. And so again, they've never done paid advertising before. By week 2, they were like, we want to spend 40, right? And so again, sometimes you have to go a little bit lower, because I think one of the first.
Is it because they started seeing results immediately?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And through what ad unit? Story ads. But I learned something very early. I was on the website Quora. Okay, and it's a question and answer website. And one of the questions was, how do you land a 100K, paid media marketing client? Right. And the first answer read, you don't land one of those, you grow one of those. Absolutely. And so that's why I always look for opportunities no matter where they are. We'd love huge clients, right? We'd love a horse to just land on us, right? But yeah. Usually that doesn't happen. And so what I say our sweet spot are brands that are just getting started, have maybe a little bit of paid media, but want to do in between that 20 to 50K range to kind of start, and then let us prove that we can scale them to $500,000 a month. So 20 to 50K a month, I think, is a good start.
Great. And so what does that onboarding process look like? Do you guys do the analytical reviews? You're looking at their content, like, I know you guys do a lot of hand-holding, and you guys do a lot of consulting and advice. Yeah. But just, if a new customer wanted to reach out, what type of customer, what's the onboarding look like? Walk me through that, please.
Sure. It usually starts with an audit. And so that's me asking the advertiser for access to their Google ads as well as their Facebook ads. And so then we take that data and we put it into our analytics software powered by Power BI. And then once we have that, we have a clear picture as to what their data and what they've done so far looks like. And so after that, we usually put together a PowerPoint that kind of walks them through their data. We take them through, their analytics, but then we also do that consulting piece that you talked about and ask the right questions. Where do you see your company in a couple of years? What's the product roadmap look like? Are you going to be an agency's worst nightmare and sell out in a month? Right? Like, we got to figure all these different variables out, but those are the type of questions that we ask to start, and then, we agree on what type of relationship. I think the unique thing about Variable Media is the fact that we try to surround ourselves around the brand. Like, we know that every single brand is different, even if they're in the same category, and they're all looking for something unique. And so if I can bend a little bit here, bend a little bit there to make sure that they get the most out of it, that's what I want. Because ultimately, when we work with brands, we want to save them time. We want them to be focused on organic social. We want them to be focused on building better products, working with their customer service, getting all that right, because that only influences our paid. Because paid media today, in my opinion, is only an amplification tool.
Right.
If I can take the worry of paid media off their plate and they can focus on the things that I'm going to amplify, that's only going to make me more money, and move their business even farther.
Right. So let's talk a bit about some common mistakes brands make. Where do brands generally fall short, and what is your advice, how to avoid these common mistakes?
I think the number one place that brands fall short is not understanding their data.
Okay.
Is just not being able to understand Google Analytics, if they're doing paid media, Google ads and Facebook ads, and really not having a great understanding of what they're getting. I see the brands that struggle, that are just kind of throwing things out there, seeing what comes back and going, wow, that was a win, but not knowing how it worked. Or wow, we lost over there, but not knowing why you lost. Like answering that why question, I think that's like the biggest struggle for brands today.
But let's be realistic.
Sure.
Most of these brands are not analytic geniuses like yourself.
100%.
What do they do? How do you, is there, how do they approach this problem? Should they be relying? Is it fair to say that there's certain things that they should be relying on professionals to take care of?
Yeah.
Like my personal belief is brands should be worried about their brand and their product. The mechanics, the support, the amplifiers that comes, whether it's marketing or technology, or they should come from experts. This is why they hire experts. And analytics is a very tough thing to look at.
You're absolutely
There's
right.
a lot of moving parts. They don't know what CPCs and CPTs mean. This is jargon that only industry people understand.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how you guys help. I know you've built an incredible dashboard. This dashboard is something that needs to become a SaaS eventually.
Yeah.
Talk about advantages of having a professional that knows how to read analytics, knows how to help the brand pivot in marketing, understand, whether certain messaging or content is working or not.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important fact, and this is something that the reason why I want you to talk about it is because a lot of people simply don't want to admit it.
Yeah.
Right? It's kind of taboo. It's a big elephant in the room. Like, well, if we admit to it, that means we have to pay for it. And I think it's fine. People should pay professionals to handle things that are most important.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for any brand, right, like insights are gold. And so how do you mine that gold? Do you hire a team like me, or do you try to do it yourself? And I think in hiring a team like us, what we really do is we try to mine that gold, we try to mine those insights, and really educate the advertiser on what the data is really telling us. And so today we have so much really good data. I look at our data sets in marketing as the most valuable, interesting type of data because we have user behavior behind it. And if I can showcase to an advertiser the user behavior of their audience to say, listen, people that spend over 5 minutes on your site convert X percentage better. How do we keep them on your site more? Oh, let's build more blog content. Oh wow, my brother's a writer, I'll have him write stuff. But that type of insight leads to that chain reaction of, wow, I had this tool over here, I didn't even know I was supposed to be using it.
Correct.
But that type of stuff I think is key to them.
Any examples from the clients that you've done this with?
Sure. I call this one like the Golden Coil case study, and I just presented this at Hero Conference 2 days ago. And so, Facebook has this thing where they want a lot of control. Right. And so they'll tell you, hey, don't break out the placements, all placements, okay? Meaning they want you to run across everything, news feeds, stories, audience network, everything. And then they also say like campaign budget optimization, okay? Don't change the budgets at the ad set or the audience level, change them at the campaign level. Right? And then they also want you to do dynamic product ads, but with a broad audience. The whole concept of those three things give me more control as Facebook, right? What we saw within the first week was that story ads was at like a $4 CPM, but the newsfeed was at 12 on Instagram and 18 on Facebook. By the second week, we had stories at $3, and by the fourth week, we had stories at $1. And it was to the point where we were driving 7 million impressions, or 7 million, we were reaching 7 million people with like $7,000 in November, in the most expensive time, taking advantage of like the story ad unit.
Incredible.
And it's because like we decided to break it out. We saw the value and we said, wow, if I pick that conversion objective, because in all these platforms now, you have to pick an objective. What do you want? Conversions. What the system doesn't understand is that I need reach too. This brand just started with their paid media. Like they've never sold over, a couple of planners a day. Like they need to reach a lot of people. And so understanding that secondary objective, always looking out for the brand's biggest benefit, allowed us to be able to break out that piece, look at the data and say, I'm gonna scale this and I'm gonna do exactly what Facebook doesn't want us to do. And again, this is nothing against Facebook. They got an amazing platform, amazing reps, this and that, but I feel like they're building a platform for everybody, and it's not necessarily for me as what I feel like is an experienced media buyer where I can figure these things out. So that's one case study where we were able to scale a brand in 2 months. They sold out, became an agency's worst nightmare. Like you sell out a product, we got to stop the ads. Cool, but they've got a business that is just on fire now, and I'm so proud of these guys.
Great, I love it. I mean, success stories are phenomenal. Can we talk a little bit about some failures?
Oh yeah.
Where, any failed customers that should have done something differently?
I think a lot of our failures come from just, telling the truth. And it sucks when any advertiser leaves us. Like it's a shot to the heart. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and it hurts. It hurts. We've had a couple of advertisers that I've just had to tell the truth, and it's because they come with this idea of like, yeah, I want a 3-to-1, I want a 4-to-1. In terms of return on ad spend, for every dollar I spend, I want $3 to $4 back. And what I have to tell them sometimes is that like, I can't double your business. I can't guarantee that. Like, I'm just gonna analyze all the data, all the different variables, and let you guys make a really good decision. And I think in hearing that, like they were looking for somebody to tell them like they're gonna,
win their
business.
Lie.
And,
they want to hear a sweet lie instead of a bit of truth.
And I'm not willing to do that. And so like, I look at those as a few losses. I think one of the big ones that we had early on is that we were working with an advertiser. Everything was going well. We get a call on a Friday. Hey, we're gonna go in a different direction, out of the blue. And I was like, why? I can't believe this, this and that. And ultimately like had to let them go their way. And they went to another agency. Within 3 months, they were calling me and saying, hey Cory, we haven't gotten any reporting. Really? Okay, we wanna come back. And so, in some instances, you have brands that haven't dealt with a few different agencies.
Right.
And so they get into a trouble not understanding like, oh, I'm with a good one.
But I think it's okay. We deal with this too, right? We have customers that will, I don't think customers realize that, boutique agencies, smaller guys care more, right? Like I tell my clients always, I don't have a 300-man team that I just need to bang hours for. Like, yeah. I care about your company. I care. Like, if I keep you successful, you keep me successful. You retain 100%. Me. You make my existence meaningful, right? And the problem is that I believe that sometimes customers get too comfortable, right? The hand-holding, the personal attention, the reporting, the instant gratification, right? Like, we have project managers that respond immediately, right? Whether it's email, phone call, WhatsApp, you name it, doesn't matter. We respond. We care for whether it's a small problem or a big problem, right? Or even if it's just advice, we want to respond as fast as possible. And then when customers spend a couple of years with you and they feel so comfortable, they think that that's the way it is everywhere. And when they walk away, and then they experience a completely different experience, they realize, holy crap, it's really not that comfy on the other side. And so we had instances where clients would consider a bigger agency, thinking that they're growing so massively that, maybe they need to escalate. But then they came back because they just like you said, right? They want that personal attention and personal service.
It's important to care.
Right.
I think for any brand evaluating any agency, consultant, intern, you want these people to care about your brand. And that's what, I really wasn't feeling like in the LA market. You know, like working with bigger brands,
Right.
it's hard to feel, right? Like when you work with smaller brands, like you're a part of their business. You're going to be able to move the needle for them, and like that's just more of a satisfying
And
feeling.
they're actually more open-minded.
Yeah.
They pay attention more to advice, which is phenomenal. And I think, look, 80% of the economy is driven by, you know, startups and small businesses. And, you know, what kind of our goal is, you know, as a company is to find the right businesses that, you know, those diamonds in a rough, and help them really scale, help them really elevate and become the bigger businesses, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's the beauty part, where if we can help the right companies, you know, not just sell products, but deliver value to their customers, you know, which is one thing that we started strongly focusing on, is that we don't take on just any clients anymore. You know, a client or a company or a brand that we work with, or co-founders that we'll bring in and build a startup with, has to build something meaningful. It's, you know, that if you're just selling products, just go on Amazon. Amazon will got your back. You don't need an agency. You don't need a partner, right? Like, I think it's safe for us to call ourselves partners with our clients rather than just calling them clients. And I think it's a big difference, and these brands do appreciate that.
100%.
So, Cory, with your expertise in the field, and you've been doing this for a very long time, you've worked with a lot of big brands, you've worked with a lot of startups. Let's forget about the past, let's forget about today, let's talk about the future.
Let's do it.
Where should brands be paying attention to? What platforms do you think will be moving up? And just in general, where should companies be creating their focus? And what's your view on just marketing in general for the future?
Yeah, the first thing I want to talk about is video. Like, video couldn't be more important to any brand today, you know, especially as we sit here and recording video. But it's not just one type of video, it's all types. It's vertical, it's landscape, it's square, it's building for multiple platforms. And so you have to be much savvier with your video today, as well as in the future. Video is only going to grow at an exponential rate. And so I would make sure that video is core to whatever you do. And then I think from a platform perspective, I'm really looking at Instagram and YouTube to continue to take off for probably like the next 5 years. And I can't really see farther than that, unfortunately, because this stuff changes every single year. Like, I remember talking about the most valuable impression being YouTube last year. Now I think it's story ads. Like, I really do. And so with things changing so fast, you have to think of like what's going to go across all platforms. And I think that's video. And so I would make video core if we're thinking about the future. I would bet on Instagram and YouTube to probably hold the bulk of your budget from a paid standpoint, and should get the bulk of your energy from an organic standpoint. And then I think if we're going to talk about, you know, making a bet on the future, I would say the app for TikTok.
TikTok.
The TikTok
this has
app.
been the new talk of the town.
Yes. From an organic standpoint, I don't think there's anything more entertaining than that app. From an advertising standpoint, I don't think that they're there yet. But I think they're going the same route like many of the platforms before. Let me gather the audience. Once I've got all the audience, now we'll introduce the ads to satisfy our shareholders.
But they also, I mean, TikTok, speaking of them, they're integrated. They're integrated with Instagram, with Snapchat, with Facebook. So you could create content and start delivering it through TikTok as well. So when the advertising piece will be ready, you're already ready, right? I agree.
And also the secret to TikTok, right, is video. Like giving people more tools with video, you know, I think is what TikTok did. And it allowed a lot of really new type of content to be created. And it's turning especially the younger Gen Z generation into amazing content creators.
Yeah.
Like how we're gonna have a generation of people that are completely comfortable in front of the camera.
Yes.
Like it's gonna be a totally new sight. And I think, you know, another point to that generation, because, you know, they're growing up, they're entering the workforce now, you know, and they're gonna be leaders one day, is that this is the group of people that grew up with social media. That's all that they know. And so that's all that they expect from brands.
They starts and ends with social.
It was handed to them. It was like, here guys, this is how this works.
Right.
And they were like, oh, okay. They didn't see it develop. And so therefore it's core to who they are. And whenever they...
Very valid point. Very valid point.
And so whenever they hear about anything new, it's like, well, let me go look at their Instagram. That's where their most beautiful images are. That's where I'm going to see their product at the highest level. And so that's kind of like their first move whenever they hear about something new. And that's why I said staying core to Instagram, you know, because that's where I think people go to research the brand. But if they go to YouTube, they're really looking to watch content for a longer period of time. And that's why I think that video, but more importantly, that product demonstration type of video is so important for both of those platforms.
That's excellent, man. I'm with you 100%.
Awesome.
Listen, this has been an incredible journey. I thank you very much for making the trip.
And
Really, really happy to speak with you. This has been very informative. We are going to be speaking soon about a joint venture that we're going to be working on. Nano and Variable will form a joint venture for a very special amount of brands. We're going to be doing a limited offer where we're going to bring full service to your doors, from user experience to content creation to full-blown marketing. You will do nothing. We will take care of everything. Cory, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much for coming out. It was great to have you.
appreciate you.
We have something special for you guys. We're working on a joint venture where we're going to put together marketing, content, and user experience in one package. Variable.media and Nano are joining forces. We're going to pick only 3 select brands that we're going to be working with. We will take care of everything, soup to nuts, from A to Z. Only thing you have to worry about is catering to your customers. So that information is coming soon. We will post it up on our websites with the instructions and minimums that you guys need in order to qualify. We want to thank everyone for taking the time. Cory, special thank you to you. Thank you for coming out. It's been a real pleasure. And we're hoping to do this again.
Yeah, appreciate you. Thank you.